Howdy, DF Cowboys. Can we address the elephant in the room, please? Windows 11. Windows, right? He's got a list of things here that have happened with Windows. They released a patch 2 years later, which gives a generational uplift to Zen 4 and Zen 5 CPUs.
Ridiculous.
The latest version reduces performance on Arrow Lake. Not sure whether that's true or not. But
I think that's a hub testing, and it is true.
Right. Okay, cool. The latest version of Windows also causes Ubisoft games to crash. That is objectively true. Why is the current state of Windows 11 causing so many issues with newer CPU releases? Is Microsoft to fault, or is it Intel/AMD? Is Windows the new Unreal?
I think Unreal.
There have been issues, haven't there, Alex? There have been issues here, and as I understand it, the latest update to Windows is actually doing quite a lot of changes, which is causing the whole Ubisoft problem. But yes, I mean, there are issues, aren't there? There's weirdness happening with Windows.
Yeah, I actually do think there is actually a problem with testing. The revisions that we see to Copilot, I think, are also evidence of that, where they're realizing, like, through testing and through just exposing it to more users, that they're not testing things thoroughly, or they're not thinking things through thoroughly, so that they have to call it back. And I think this has happened a number of times, but the Zen performance, as well as the regressions with Arrow Lake, really make me wonder how much they are benchmarking things, just benchmarking things between versions, because these are issues that cut through the noise. You shouldn't expect 3 to 5% sometimes difference across versions, just for randomness. I would say it's nothing too awful, but those differences that we saw were measurable, were a lot higher than that. So yeah, I think Windows does actually have a QA managerial something. I don't want to say the QA testers are wrong or something like that. They probably work crazy hours and do things that they don't want to do, but the decision to put it out and then whatever they're doing in the testing process is not right. I also think there's changes now to the way multiplane overlays work in Windows 11, which is breaking some stuff. So it's not just CPU performance. That's a GPU related thing. So these things keep happening. I'm not a fan of Windows 11 anymore, in spite of how much better it is at doing certain tasks. I really want Microsoft to make me pay them 250 to 300 euros to get a version of Windows that doesn't have any AI in it and is connected to the internet just for updates. Like, basically, I want Windows XP back. I don't like the way Windows is evolving currently, especially from like a performance usability standpoint. That so many things are so slow now. Just I click on like the equivalent of my computer to go to my series of folders, but then because it's connected to like their cloud service of trying to store my stuff online that I don't use and I don't turn off, because I try and keep my Windows a default for testing purposes so I can expose issues to default Windows, then it takes like 1.5 seconds on like a modern NVMe to show like some new folder for some reason. What is that about? Like, that's like Windows 98 is probably better at that kind of thing. Like, I don't know. I find it embarrassing all the time. But John also probably has stories. John, do you have any stories?
Oh, man. I mean, nothing that comes to mind right off the top of my head, other than the fact that it does seem like things will be fine for a while on your PC, and then all of a sudden updates hit, something changes, and then, oh no, this thing's crashing now, or this thing's behaving weird. And I mean, I feel like this is more frustrating lately than it's ever been. Mm-hmm. Like I still dabble and use retro PCs often, and I'm always amazed. Like when you boot up a Windows 98 PC with period appropriate hardware, it's kind of nuts just how fast and responsive it is right away. Mm-hmm. And it just makes me think of how resources are probably not being used as well as they could in a lot of modern software. Like just things are so RAM hungry and inefficient. They don't make great use of CPUs today. There's so much more that could be done faster, I'd imagine. But like at this point, it's so big and complex. Like changing things is inherently very, very difficult, I'd imagine. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. That said, I will say, I actually, on the positive side of Windows 11, I actually think the HDR is actually in a good spot, finally, with Windows 11. I've had mostly good luck outside of a couple random games like Stalker 2 being weird about its HDR, wanting exclusive full screen. But I actually was able to map like the HDR toggle button to one of the G buttons on my Logitech keyboard. And you just tap it and it switches Windows to HDR. Tap it again, it goes back to SDR. So anytime I want HDR content, just hit the button and just go. And 9 times out of 10, it just works. And if a game doesn't do HDR, I feel like NVIDIA's RTX HDR or even Auto HDR from Microsoft, which you can't use together, you have to disable one or the other. They're both really good. So I feel like I use HDR on most PC games these days, which is cool. So I will give them credit for that.
Well, I've got an issue with Windows 11. I've got a Samsung 870 EVO 4 terabyte SATA drive, right? This is a really good SATA drive. If I go in to look at one folder, it just says working on it. And it will sit there saying working on it for 10 seconds. The drive itself, if I read or write from it, is perfectly performant. But going into any folder, it's just like an extended pause of working on it. It's just incredibly annoying.
Dude.
Isn't that a thumbnail generation bug within Windows? Is that it? I don't know.
It should be, except that I'm using the detail view. So it should just be producing file names.
It should just be lightning. Oh, I hate that crap.
Yes.
I've had something
the
like
kind
that
of crazy things happening with Windows. But look, here's the thing, right? Microsoft wants to make Windows 11 seemingly there's some sort of merging between Windows 11 and Xbox. And, if even the basics on Windows 11 are having issues, then is that a good move? There's a lot of, this is even before we get into the whole stutter struggle issue. Because there seems to be foundational problems with Windows that might suggest that rolling it out for consoles or, making PC into a console, if you like, isn't particularly a great idea.
Dude, I just thought of 2 bugbears, though, Alex, that I could share. That have been a long time Windows problem. One, server execution error, or whatever it's called.
Yes.
I have a lot of MP3s, media files on my system. When you just click and open them, it's usually fine. But like one time out of 10, you try to open one of these files, and this has happened on every PC build for the last 10 years across all the different Windows. It'll just not respond. And you're like, what's going on? The media player app, it won't open. It's very unresponsive. And then eventually it pops up server execution error in an old style Windows error box. It looks like it's from Windows Vista error or something. And you just have to click OK, and then it works again. And I never have been able to figure out why it does it on clean installs. It's just a problem with Windows. The other thing that really irks me is the way it handles external hard drives, where I use big external hard drives for backing up and I keep them connected, right? They spin down after a while to conserve
I know
energy,
where you're
whatever,
going with
right?
this, John.
You open up my computer or whatever, or you try to go to one of those drives, Windows just going to be like, all right, I'm going to cross my arms and do nothing until this drive is ready. I'm sorry, you can't use your computer until this drive is ready. We're not going to let anything else happen. It's just bam, just
it's
wait.
A blocker. Yeah.
It's classic
you can
example.
still move. Oh, I hate that.
A classic example is the media player, where the internal media player, if I double click on a video that is on one of my SSDs, for some reason, it won't play it until it's spooled up the dormant USB drive, which is about 8 seconds for that process to complete. And then I can watch my video, which is on an SSD and nothing to do with that external drive. There's just weird issues.
Any application that potentially will look at that external drive, whether or not you're actually looking at it or not, if it's just an option, it's going to make you wait until the darn thing is spooled up. And I think that is just ridiculous. There's got to be a better way to handle this, to allow other operations to continue until you very directly try to access the file. But then just I don't know. It's just, it's bad.
I have another bug that makes me laugh, and I won't solve it because apparently it's not solvable. But on the 7800X3D system, every single time I shut it down, it gives me an error right before I shut it down. And if you Google it, there's an just Google X3D shutdown error, and you'll see hundreds of posts about it. It's like related to some sort of Xbox thing. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
But I get that. And I think actually a lot of people get that.
Wow,
Write a comment on this web
comments.
zone if you get that, if you get that error too. But, yeah, it just makes me laugh. It doesn't actually affect anything, but it's funny just to see a big red error when I try to shut down my PC. Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that we don't particularly like Windows 11.
No. At the end of the day,
Okay.
no.